Hello and welcome to this AV LAN review of the Denon AVR-X4000 home cinema receiver. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the features of this receiver, we're going to show you its setup menus, we're going to tell you how to set it up, and more crucially, we're going to tell you what we think it sounds like.
So this is the AVR-X4000 from Denon, and it's their sort of mid to higher end receiver. It replaces last year's model, which is the AVR-3313. Looks wise, it looks very similar. It has an aluminium front panel, and it doesn't differ that much in features. One of the big differences between this one and last year's model is that this has Odyssey XT32, which last year's it was omitted from last year's model, and that does mean it's now quite competitively priced compared to other receivers that are now coming out in the market with XT32. This may even be the cheapest one you can get with XT32 on. So if that's something for you, having the Odyssey room correction on a unit, then this is really where it starts to have the best version of that, which is XT32. Behind that aluminium front panel, it has a little flap, so all the controls are hidden, unlike on the cheaper models. And you have access to a few different switches and buttons and the main setup menus there, so you can turn the zones on and off. You also have the front HDMI input. It has 7 HDMI inputs, a USB input to plug in an iPod or something like a USB flash drive or a hard drive to play back music, and just the normal sort of front ends. That setup mic, that's where you put in the Odyssey microphone to do the room correction and auto setup. Now, looks wise, it's quite minimalistic with that flap closed, and it just has those two controls on the front. One is the input select, and the one on the right is the volume. It has DTS Neo-X. It has True HD, DTS HD decoding. Like I say, the XT32 as well, and that is something really good for this price point. It has network stream, which is fairly standard now. And one of the features that does make this unique is its Denon link, which will show you that works with a compatible Denon Blu-ray player, which at the moment is the DBT3313, and it syncs the clocks between the two units. So this is the back panel. The speaker terminals on the back have been rearranged from previous generations, so they're a lot better laid out, and they're now color coded as well, something that Denon have borrowed, so we shall say, from Onkyo, because Onkyo have had that for a number of years. The back panel's fairly full up with connections, which is good to see, and one of the more important ones is that Denon link, and this helps cut down on jitter. So if you partner this up with a matching Denon Blu-ray player that has Denon Link HD, you hook it up, and the sound is still actually transmitted down the HDMI cable. But what this does is links the clocks together. So it's only using the clock in one of the units, which I believe is in the actual receiver. So helps cut down jitter, therefore should give better sound quality. It has an FM only tuner, and it has things like 12-volt trigger outs, an RS232 control port, remote flasher in and out. It has a phono stage for a turntable, so if you've got a record player that you still want to use. 2 optical and 2 coaxial digital inputs. And then it's got all these different speaker connections. Now, they do come with these little plastic bungs in the back, but if you prize these out, you can actually use these terminals with banana plugs, which we recommend. And even though it is fairly cleanly laid out, the back panel, it's still quite messy to use bare wire in comparison, because as you can see there, banana plugs come straight out. If you're bare wiring, you have to undo the terminal, you have to twist the cable, because if you don't, it does that. Ideally, if you are going to bare wire, you should solder them up, because what happens is that the cable oxidizes up, and then if the cable's moved at all, it's not going to make a very good connection, or you have to reconnect it. You're going to have to trim them all back and re-terminate them again. Whereas with the banana plug, you've got a good gold-plated connection, making a good contact with the back. It has a set of pre-outs here, so you can add a power amp to it. Now, it only has 7 amps built into it, but it does have the ability to process 9 channels of information. And it has more than that. It has 11 channels, 11.2 channels of pre-outs, but you can only use 9 of those at a time. You have to specify in the setup menu, which we'll show you in a bit, how you do that. It has twin HDMI outputs, which will work simultaneously, showing the same image
Now we're going to take the lid off the AVR-X4000 and show you its internal components, what makes it work.
Now inside, that main green board that spans the entire width has virtually all the audio processing, the video processing, all the HDMI connections all soldered directly onto that board. The front one comes across on a cable as well. That is the main heart of the unit. And you think that that's custom made for this unit. So it's every year, pretty much, they have to design a new circuit board to accommodate the latest features and anything they want to change. So a lot of work goes into designing and making that board. They're all surface mount components as well, so very, very complex. Now behind there, this is the main amplification board, and that's the heatsink that the actual amplification modules actually attach onto. And you can probably see there's a repetition there of each of the components, and that's each of the different amplification modules, so 7 in total. You can see here just about that it's quite densely packed. As well as that board that's on top, underneath there you have the transformer and you have the main smoothing capacitors for the amplify. But you also have other boards. You can't see them because there's another board running down the side, but just about gather that there is more in there underneath. There's the whole sort of section to the right that you can see now. Underneath there's more boards doing more things, to probably bring in all the different things from the analog inputs, analog video, analog audio. So there's quite a lot of things all packed into this one box. And build-wise, it is pretty well built. The lid could maybe be a bit better.
Now we're going to show you the networking menus of the X4000. It's network streaming, it's internet radio, and how well they work.
These are the on-screen menus, and these are overlaid over whatever video is running through. It doesn't normally say 303, that's just the source that we had to feed it to be able to show you this. So you've got things in the audio menu like the subwoofer level, the cinema EQ, you can turn that on and off. Various different things like tone controls, it has basic tone controls. You shouldn't need to use those, you should have some speakers that sound good with the receiver. You can turn the audio restorer mode on or off. You can adjust the audio delay, that's per input. You can change how the volume is displayed, whether it's in -dB or just counts up in a number. We recommend the -dB because 0 dB is full amplification. Beyond that, you could damage the receiver or you could damage your speakers. You can adjust settings with the Multi-EQ XT32. And you can go in as well and adjust the equalization for each speaker. Again, as with the tone controls, wouldn't recommend this because it should sound good. You should have speakers that match each other, the same center speaker and fronts. Could come in handy if you don't, if you have a different brand or different make of center speaker to your other speakers, but you shouldn't really have that. You need to get the same speakers all round. It does have some video and picture mode settings, but I would leave those alone because ideally you want that passed straight through from your source. Now on the HDMI settings, you can select whether you want it dual or independent. You can change things like the HDMI control, whether it passes through the HDMI when it's in standby, which is very useful. The HDMI control settings, that can sometimes have some issues with different equipment, but you can actually control there whether the other unit can turn the amp on or off, and that's quite a useful thing. You can adjust the scaling, the output. It will do up to 4K scaling and 1080p, 720p. But most of the time, if it's a 1080p source coming in, you don't want it to touch it. You just want it to pass it through to if you've got a 1080p screen. You can adjust the component output, whether it's a zone 2 or a main zone. And of course, on this unit, It also has a HDMI Zone 2 output, which is very, very useful. It allows you to pass through a different source to what's going on in the main room using HDMI to another room, so you can get very long runs without any real signal degradation, and it will pass the audio through down that cable, and it will even do Dolby Digital, True HD, whatever's coming from the source. So very useful if you've got an old AV receiver. You can move that to another room and have it sharing all the sources. So if you've got a satellite receiver, a better Blu-ray player, you can have it doing all that sort of thing. You can rename the inputs as well. So rather than having game, you can have it as an Xbox or a PlayStation. You can hide sources, so the front dial on the front skips past them. So if you've only got, say, a Blu-ray player and a satellite receiver, they're the only ones you need to have it switched between. So it means you don't have to go through all the different inputs you're not using. On the speaker setup, there's a whole Odyssey option here to redo the Odyssey setup, or you can manually set it up. We recommend trying both. And here's all the different ways you can assign the amps. So you can use the amps to have 5.1 plus zone 2 or zone 3, or mono zone 2 and 3. You can bi-amp the front channels. Here in 9.1 or 9.2, you can decide which of the preouts you want to use. You can also, if you had a power amp, make this work with zones 2 and 3 in stereo, as well as 7.1 if you had enough power amps to it. So you've got a lot of configurability. It shows you there what's going on the back panel, which ones are on and which ones are off. Here you can set up whether the speakers are small or large. It shows them to be still quite large speakers on small, but realistically, if you've got fairly decent size front speakers, even if they're bookshelf speakers, we would still recommend having it on large. But look at what the frequency response is of your speakers and tailor that to how you set it up. Of course, the Odyssey does a lot of this for you, but we find it doesn't always get it right. So we prefer to just have it set up manually. You can adjust all the distances between the seating position and each speaker. You can adjust the different levels it puts a test tone through. You might find that you need to boost it slightly for the center or the rears. That can all be done. You can select individually if you want which frequency responses you want going to which speakers. If you've got a subsat system, generally speaking, you have it cut off at 80 Hz and have the rest of that then go to the sub. But it depends on what speakers you've got and what their specifications are. There's a few settings here for just 2-channel playback, whether you uses the subwoofer or not. You can decide. It again depends on what speakers you've got. If you've got full range floor standing speakers, then you shouldn't need to use the subwoofer unless you've got a very good subwoofer. There you have the IP control option if you want to turn that on, so you can control it using their app or the third-party apps. And all the network settings here. We recommend fixing the IP address. Leads to quicker startups with various different control apps. Here's all the different languages it has. I think they've added a few more from the previous year's models. Different options here for the zones. You can adjust the bass and treble. You can do things like restrict the volume that it goes up to. Useful if you've got someone in another room, like somebody a bit younger maybe, who might turn it up a bit too loud. So you've got that option for both the zones. You can rename the zones as well if you want to make them kitchen or bedroom. Make them a bit easier to find so you know exactly which one's which. You can rename it's got various quick select modes that store various different settings. I have to confess I've never used them. I don't find it that useful. You can set the trigger outs, what happens, what conditions they're on. It has an auto standby feature. You can adjust the front dimmer, the display, and select whether the channel indicators show what's coming in, what signal's coming in, or which speakers are turned on. It tells you various information here as well about what signal's going in, what signal's going out. This can be useful if you've got any problems, if you've got problems with compatibility with different devices. You can establish whether it's coming into the amp and whether it's going out again, so that's quite useful. Sometimes there are firmware updates as well, and you can select whether they notifies you about that or not. There's also an interesting feature here, which is turned off by default, that can give feedback to Denon to help with product development. And you can lock the whole setup so it can't be tinkered with by people who don't know what they're doing, so that's quite useful. Now this is the Insta Preview. You press this button on the remote and up pops some thumbnails. This shows you what's going on those different inputs, what sources are coming through. It gives you a tiny little frame by frame of what's going on. So it just comes across, and we've only got 2 source inputs here plus the one that's in the main input. So 3 things going on. And it's just quite useful to see what's going on in the different inputs, especially if you're maybe waiting for something a television program to come on or something like that. Now this is the networking menu, and here you can see on the internet radio that you can browse stations by different locations, different genres, and we've got it here. We've shown you the front panel as well, all this information comes up on the front panel at the same time. It has all the BBC national stations and as many local ones as we could see. There seem to be all there, and this unit also features Spotify. And here on Spotify, you can search for various different things. You can. There's a huge amount of music. You need a Spotify Premium account, which you have to pay for currently, and with that, it will copy various different things over as well. If you've got playlists and that sort of thing, I believe you can use those, or you can just search for music. Or look at just browse new music as well. But you have various different options there. You can make it repeat and that sort of thing. You can do all this from the front panel, and you can also do it from Denon's control app as well. It doesn't have to be done with your television on, like we're showing you now, what you get from your television. Brings back album art as well, so it's quite neat. So this is the networking client. This uses DLNA, and this allows you to browse files on a computer that's got DLNA or a NAS drive, which is what we're using here. And it's very dependent on the DLNA server that you're connecting to as to what type of files can be shared. This will play back WAV, FLAC, when it's media audio, when it's and MP3s and that kind of thing. But it depends on what your actual server will serve up. So the one we've got here is pretty comprehensive. We've got it serving FLAC 192 kilohertz. It's pretty speedy. It goes through. You can see you can navigate it pretty well. Again, you can do this from their app, or you can also do it using the front panel or the on-screen. It doesn't do, as far as we know, DSD playback, which some of the receivers on the market now can do. With the right DLNA server, it will do WAV files as well and pull back all the information that you need to be able to play those back and see what's going on. Also bring back album art if the server supports it. Also has the ability to browse various different images and have a quick look here that you can see some various different images. I don't know why you'd want to do this from the front panel, but you could do it from the front panel too. Now this is Denon's control app, and this works with Android and iOS, so Apple products. You can see down the bottom, you've got the volume on a slider. There are some buttons next to it, though they're quite small, to allow you to go up and down as well, more accurately. We find the slider goes too fast, too quickly. So you can be very, very loud, very, very quickly, and too quickly. You can change the different sound modes, so up pops a little list. And you can change the different inputs as well. You can change input to Blu-ray or TV or whatever it is. It will control a compatible CC Blu-ray player, such as the Denon ones, down the HDMI cable as well. We've only tested it with Denon though, so I don't know if it works with the other manufacturers. The most useful part of this is being able to control the networking, because it's slightly less complex than doing it through the on-screen graphics, and of course you don't have to have the television turned on at all. So if you want to, again, browse what's on Spotify, you can do that same way as we're doing it with the on-screen graphics. You can browse what's new, you can search as well, a bit easier because you can use the keyboard that's on your tablet or phone, and it brings back the album art as well. Fairly quickly too, so it's quite impressive in that respect. However, criticisms of it are that it is built obviously for a phone, and it would be much better if it was actually built for a tablet. The icons on it look awful on a tablet because they're not scaled correctly. They also don't seem to give any feedback when you press them, so you're not sure whether you've pressed them or not. The volume slider's too small and, like I say, not that accurate. And it's just over cumbersome. There's too many screens to go through, too many clicking back and doing this and doing that. We're not happy with it in that respect, but of some of the manufacturers' apps, it's probably one of the better ones. It does give you some good feedback, but it's just so wasteful of screen area. If you look at this as the tuner, for example, it'd be fine on a phone, but on a tablet, it's just a complete waste. The bottom half of this, there's nothing there. It could have more inputs, but it's not got it because it's not changing, adapting to being on the tablet. But there is an alternative. This is called MyIV. This is in development at the moment. We're going to have a full review of this soon, and we have tested it with the X4000. It works with it. It connects to it. It finds it fine. It controls the volume. It shows you what input you're on. It shows you the sound mode you're on. It has everything on a tablet. You can turn it on and off. It shows you that back as feedback. And all the controls that you're going to use most of the time are all in one place. The volume doesn't have a slider, so there's no accidentally going up to full volume. You can go across to Spotify, you can go across to different network inputs directly, all on that slider down the bottom. But the really clever thing about this that differs from the Denon app is that you can also get it to control other components. So if you've got a television with IP control, you can get it to control that. You can change channels. With the volume for the amp and the inputs and the sound modes all still in one place, you don't have to keep chopping and changing between different apps. It's all there. You should just be able to just use this one app. So quite exciting. You can do things like you can see here. You can move the channels around. You can delete channels you don't want. So for example, ITV2. And you could rearrange the channels. So you have, say, all the BBC channels in one place. Altogether, just much more cohesive than the Denon app. Now this is what you get inside the box. This year they've started including these stickers, which again is borrowing from Onkyo, who've done that for a number of years. But still, we're not complaining. It's quite good. You can label up each of the different speaker connections, and it comes with some for HDMI as well. So it helps you make sense of all that clutter behind your receiver once you've wired it all up. This is the remote control. It's quite well laid out. We quite like the remote. It has sort of glow-in-the-dark buttons, I believe, and part of it does light up to indicate what it's controlling, because it can control your television. It can do a bit of control over the devices too. It comes with this basic setup guide. You get, of course, the Odyssey microphone, a mains cable, an FM aerial, no AM, doesn't have an AM tuner built into the European UK version, and the main instruction manual is on a CD-ROM, or you can download it from Denon's website. Probably easier actually just to download it from Denon's website. Now, the pros and cons of the AVR-X4000 from Denon. It's really, really well featured for the price point, and I think they've got the upper hand this year on other manufacturers. We haven't seen all the different releases this year, but it does seem to be very well spec'd for the price. Build-wise, it's kind of what you'd expect for the price. It's got an aluminium front panel. A couple of years ago, Denon did take that off this price unit, and it really didn't suit it at all. They had a plastic front panel on something that was quite expensive. But it's got an aluminium front panel, so it feels a bit more luxurious. It has all the controls hidden away. We like that. We like the design of it. Power-wise, they've kind of massaged their figures a bit to try and fall in line with other manufacturers. We don't like that. We'd prefer that they just were honest with it. They quote it as being over 200 watts, but that's rated at one single frequency, 1 kilohertz. It's a lower impedance. It's just with one channel driven, so a bit misleading. We prefer RMS, and they do give you a figure for that, and the figure for that is 125 watts. So at 8 ohms, and because it's RMS, 20 to 20,000 hertz. So it's an average of all the frequencies you're likely to use. The only snag with that is that it says it's only with 2 channels driven. So that's quite good if you're just using it in stereo. That's pretty powerful. But if you're using it in 5 or even 7.1, then that figure's going to drop considerably down. So they don't give that figure. That's just not in the specifications. But it's reasonably well powered for its price point. That's not a problem. We really like the new layout on the back speaker terminals. That's really good. It's much cleaner. We like that they're giving now the Onkyo style stickers with it as well. It has a 2-line display on the front panel. That's quite good. And sound-wise, this is the really important thing. We think they've improved on last year. It has a really good, crisp mid-range and treble. So I think with some metal dome tweeter speakers, that may sound a little bit too overpowering, but you really do need to think about that before you buy this. We tried it out with a few. We tried it out with some KEF speakers, and we thought it was good. It was a good balance. It wasn't lacking in bass. The bass was there, and especially for music, we thought it was pretty acceptable for a home cinema receiver. So yeah, they've improved it slightly over last year's model. It sounds slightly better than the last year's, which we were impressed with as well with the 3313. But on the downside, we would say that the build quality around the lid is probably not as good as it should be, although the front panel, it does look excellent. And the app could be so much better. We're not asking it to necessarily control everything like the MyIV app does, but if it could just control this better, if it was just more logically laid out, that would be so much better. We're also not a huge fan of their menu system. We don't like how you can only access certain areas if there's a source coming in. We'd like to be able to tinker with the different settings with no source coming in. But that's just because we're generally setting these things up quite a bit and configuring them with different setups. So, but we still it's a bit restrictive. We'd like it to be a bit more logical in that respect. But on the whole, there isn't really a lot to grumble at. It's a good solid receiver for the money, spec-wise, feature-wise, and most importantly, sound-wise.
That's the end of our review of the Denon AVR-X4000. We hope you've enjoyed watching. If you'd like to see more reviews like this, or you'd like to purchase this unit, please visit our website avlan.co.uk. Thank you.